Today we're going to talk about first century Judea and lead up to the life of Christ, or his birth, I suppose. So what's going on is, if you remember from your history lessons in life, at this particular moment in time, the Roman Empire is in charge of the entirety of the Mediterranean Sea. And Jerusalem is under the Roman Empire. There is a guy that we remember from history, likely, named Julius Caesar, and he was just killed at the steps of the Senate. You remember the story, "Et tu, Brute," and you know that he was killed. The empire, the Roman Republic, from that moment died. And what they tried to prevent, which is an emperor, is what they ended up getting. And there was a conflict that happened right away after Julius Caesar is killed, where there's a fight for power. And you remember probably from history a woman named Cleopatra, and she was the queen that oversaw the Egyptian part of the empire. And you remember she had a relationship with Julius Caesar. You remember she had a relationship with Mark Antony right after, and they end up both killing themselves together. It's a very famous scene that you can watch in probably many different documentaries. At that time, there was also a man named Herod. Now, there's several Herods in first century Judea, but Herod is amongst these elites that he knows Cleopatra, he knows Mark Antony. He also plays both sides of the political aisle. And so he also knows the man who ends up taking the reins of the Roman Empire, which is Octavian, who is also becomes known as Caesar Augustus. So Caesar Augustus is the one who ushers in what's called a Pax Romani, 100 years of peace. So there's really this movement to this Roman Empire away from the Roman Republic. There's a lot of change in the air, and the Jews in Judea are there, and this guy, Herod, maneuvers his way to become the king of Judea, and he's basically a puppet king. He was supposed to probably go to Syria, but he lands in Jerusalem and becomes the king over all of Jerusalem. Very interesting figure in history, certainly. He has an interesting family. He, is very, very wealthy. They have a lot of family relationships that are not kosher, to say the least. Lots of family members marrying other family members, and a lot of that going on in his history. He had a lot of children because he was a wealthy man. Had a lot of children by many wives. So he was not really practicing Judaism in any real sense. The other thing that he was doing, which is important, is that he was there and rebuilding the temple. And he put a nice shine on it. He made it look infinitely better than the second temple that already existed, and was preparing it for the imminent coming of the Messiah. Everyone in the air felt that the Messiah was coming, and that the Messiah was going to come to destroy the Roman Empire, or at least eliminate the Roman rule from Jerusalem, and that the Messiah would come and rule over. This Herod rebuilds and rededicates the temple, if you will. Still the second temple, but this becomes known at the time of Jesus as either Herod's temple or the Jesus temple, because obviously Jesus went into the temple. So it's a very interesting time. Everyone's awaiting the Messiah. Everyone's expecting the Messiah. There's an old man in and around Jerusalem as well, and his name is Simeon, which we later will know him as the God receiver. He's like 300 years old. After Jesus is brought to him, he says, "Lord, now lettest thou thy servant depart in peace according to thy word. For mine eyes have seen thy salvation, which thou hast prepared before the face of all people, a light to lighten the Gentiles and the glory of thy people, Israel." So that man is really old. He is believed to have translated the Septuagint, or been part of the 70 that translated the Old Testament from the Hebrew into the Greek text, and he is now in Jerusalem at the temple, working there, and has been there for quite a while. Also, what's happening in and around Jerusalem is there's this movement, there's this feeling that the Messiah was coming. There's a lot of zealots in and around the Roman Empire. In Jerusalem, these are guys who had great zeal. That term zealot and the term zeal comes from these particular people who are Jewish and are ready for the revolution. So they're going around. They had what was called a sikka, a dagger, and they would go and kill the Roman soldiers in the streets. They'd come up behind them real fast. They pull up the sikka, and they jam it up their under their breastplate, and so they would bleed out and die. That was kind of how they went about it. But they'd get going really fast and prevent themselves from getting caught really quickly. So zeal was amongst the people because they know that the Messiah is coming, and when the Messiah comes, he will teach them all things. So, and he will basically eliminate the Roman emperors and basically set his reign over all of Jerusalem forever. So this is what's permeating the culture. Meanwhile, and this is where the church is like, where the church really sees the fulfillment of the person of Jesus Christ. Meanwhile, there's another family. There's a man who is named Joachim, and his wife, her name is Anna. And they're pretty old in age, and they go to the temple in order to bring their offerings. They're very good people, like incredibly good people. It's believed that they gave like half of their wealth away, and they did everything right according to the law. But in the mind of the Jews at the time, if you are blessed with wealth, this is a sign from God that you have done the right things in this life. If you are blessed with wealth, you also are blessed with children. And to not have children but have wealth is a very weird thing. It really doesn't make any sense. Well, there's this old couple, Joachim and Anna. They're old at this point. I think I want to say they're in their, they've been married for 50 years. They're probably 70 years old at this point. And they go to the temple to bring their offering, and they are met with resistance at the temple gate, if you will. And the priest of the temple, the high priest, rejected them and told them because they don't have any children, if they've been married for 50 years, they cannot enter. And it throws Joachim for a loop. And, he's trying to make sense of it all. I mean, because he's given like a third to the poor, a third of his wealth to the temple, and he used a third of it for himself and his wife. He was well off. He had two homes, one in Nazareth and the other right by the sheep gate in Jerusalem. So very well-to-do family without a child. So this was a problem for them. So since he was rejected by the high priest, he kind of goes up to the wilderness. They always go to the wilderness. He hides there in the hill country. And while he's out there, he thinks about Abraham and Sarah, that they conceived a child in their old age. And he is praying to God to give him a child in old age, and they would dedicate the child to the temple. That's the promise that he makes to God. Meanwhile, his wife, Anna, she's going home without her husband because he's now fled into the wilderness after being rejected. She goes home and she feels like she's a widow. And she's barren, so she's doubly cursed. because she lost her husband and she lost her ability to have children, a child. She goes home and prays, and in the same time frame, they are both met by the Archangel Gabriel. The Archangel Gabriel comes and talks to them. He appears to both of them. He says, "You will have a child. You need to go to the Golden Gate in Jerusalem and meet with your wife, meet with your husband, and you will find him there, and you need to basically go in and conceive your child." And so they do, and they obviously both pledge to give this child to the temple. So if they have a child by miracle in their old age, they're going to go to the temple and offer this child. So 9 months later, she has the Virgin Mary. The Virgin Mary is born in the church. We have her birth date on September 8th, and she already knew that she was going to have a girl, and she had a girl. And 8 days later, they named her Mary because of Miriam, who is the sister of Moses. And this is a very important day. It's interesting that Joachim, his name means the Lord's restoration, and Anna, her name means grace. And Mary can mean many things, but she's the preferred lady. She's the best of them. Exalted lady. She's someone higher. She's exalted. She's something great. And so Grace, Anna, bore the lady, the mistress of creation. It's a very beautiful thing. Probably the birth of the Virgin Mary took place either in Nazareth or by the Sheep Gate in Jerusalem. But the church likes to think that she was born by the Sheep Gate in Jerusalem. Definitely a lot of things happened with her and her in her life. And they obviously promised to give her over to the temple. And so at 9 months of age, she took her first steps. She took 7 steps the first time she walked. On her first birthday, they had a big feast. Usually you do that for a boy, but they had a girl. But because her old age, all the priests came to this home, and because the family had given so much to the temple, all the priests came and blessed this beautiful child. So Mary received blessings from a lot of priests. It's a very beautiful thing. Then on her second birthday, Joachim suggested to take her to the temple. Anna knew the promise that she had made to God, that she would dedicate this child to the temple, but they waited 1 more year to do that. They took her on her third birthday to the temple, and she danced all the way up into the temple. She was escorted by virgins to the temple. It was a big deal, and they had a lot of money, and they dedicated their daughter to the temple in such a beautiful way. I can't underscore this. In the Palestinian culture, to this day, a bride is danced with candles in a similar fashion before she in like the reception in the evening before, or the night of the wedding, before she has relations with her husband. It's a dance, and I really think that you can see this dance amongst the Palestinian people. I would also add that many times when we do baptisms for Palestinian families, they almost all go around the table together with candles, with all the little children that when the child is baptized. It must be something to do with what's going on with the Virgin Mary. I don't have a definitive answer for that, but it seems obvious to me, but maybe it's not something that's actually taken place. So the temple, when she was built, when she was there, when she was brought to it, there was a high priest at the time, and his name was Zacharias. So Joachim and Anna had family members, and they were from this line of Judah, and also the priestly line of Levi. So there was definitely some royal priestly line in the Virgin Mary. And Joachim's wife, Anna, had a sister, and her sister had a daughter named Elizabeth. So Elizabeth is the niece of Anna, and Elizabeth is married to the high priest, whose name is Zacharias. So Zacharias, or sometimes his name is named Zachariah, depending on the translation. Zacharias is going to receive the Virgin Mary in the temple, at the temple, and he's going to bring her into the temple, and he is going to receive her at the top of the stairs, so to speak, and take her into the temple and dedicate her into the temple as a virgin of the temple. And so this is like her uncle, cousin. Okay, so much older man, but he's the Virgin Mary's cousin. Elizabeth is a much older woman, because again, Joachim and Anna have this miraculous child at age like 71. They take her to the temple. They come visit her for many years, for like the next 7 years in the temple. So it's not like they just drop her off and like leave her there and never come to visit her. They do until they die. They die and are buried in Jerusalem. So their tomb is right there where the Virgin Mary's tomb is, and that's a church that's very deep under the ground. And they basically bring her into the temple. When Zacharias takes her into the temple, he takes her into the Holy of Holies. He was compelled by God to take the Virgin Mary into the Holy of Holies, which is only the place where the high priest can go into. No one else can, because they will die, because the Ark of the Covenant is in there, and they will die. So he gets compelled to take her in there in this day that she enters into the temple, and she goes in there. She is the Ark of the Covenant. Okay, that's she is the Holy of Holies. She is the one who contains the uncontainable God. The Virgin Mary is. So she spends a lot of time actually in the Holy of Holies. She lived there for 9 years in the Holy of Holies. She was filled with glory of God, and her womb was filled with the glory of God. So she was in the presence of God for most of her life. Her parents were very pious, and now she's pious, and she's living there from the age 3 to age 12. So she grows up there. About 10 years old, she's acting like a 30-year-old. She was doing all this knitting work. She was such a beautiful, beautiful human being, and would be fed by the Archangel Gabriel. And that was a big part of her time there in the temple. She would pray. She would weave. She was a weaver. Then she would pray again. Then the angel would give her food. She'd give most of it to the poor. She was such a beautiful, beautiful monastic soul. She dedicated her life to being a virgin. She wanted nothing else but to be a virgin. So this was an important thing for her, and something that she would not actually she would always get to continue to be a virgin. She never really, when you're a virgin, you can't have a child, you can't be a mother. So she didn't desire to be a mother. She desired to be a virgin. Okay? And God saw the beauty in her and all of her life and what she did and what she stood for and how she lived. And he made her to be the mother of God. And the way that that happened took place like this. I have to kind of switch our mind just a little bit, because I mentioned Zacharias and Elizabeth. Zacharias is the high priest. He's been there for a while, and the Virgin Mary is now like 12 years old, let's say. So he received her into the temple when she was 3, so he was already the high priest then. So he's been there for probably at least 10 years. And he is doing the daily offering. He's at what's called the altar of incense. When you remember that temple video, there's the Holy of Holies, and then in front of the Holy of Holies is an altar of incense, and outside there's an altar of sacrifice. So he's inside in the temple, and he's doing the offering at the altar of incense. And the Archangel Gabriel appears to him and basically tells him that he is going to have a son. He's kind of like in disbelief about it because his wife is old and they don't have a child. So how is that going to happen? He doesn't fully know because his wife is old. And because of his disbelief, his mouth goes mute. He's not able to speak at all. And it remains mute for the next 9 months. Okay? And the temple has a high priest, but it doesn't have a high priest that can speak, and they don't know if his voice is ever going to return. So they replace him. They replace him with another high priest. That high priest is not related to the Virgin Mary, and in fact starts seeing that there's a lot of these young virgins in and around the temple, and it's time for them to get married off. So they have to get rid of these virgins as a result of Zacharias no longer able to protect them because he can't speak. They basically they basically cast lots as to who is going to take the Virgin Mary. She protests. She says, I am dedicated virgin. I'm not going to get married. I'm not going to have relations. But yeah, that's true, but you can't stay here, is kind of the answer she receives. So they cast lots, and the one who gets to take her as his wife is Joseph. And this makes sense. He's an old man. He's not going to do anything to her. He's just going to take her back to his hometown of Nazareth. He's somehow related to Zacharias. He's somehow related to Joachim and Anna. Remember, Joachim and Anna died maybe a few years ago. And so he takes the Virgin Mary to be his betrothed. Okay? So betrothal is like a contractual marriage, but it's not marriage. It's the contract part of marriage. Marriage requires consummation. So he never consummates the marriage. And that's a really interesting thing, because now Zacharias and Elizabeth are pregnant, and they have been for like 6 months. The Virgin Mary is going to go visit them, but only after she's in Nazareth with her betrothed. And she gets visited by the Archangel Gabriel. And the Archangel Gabriel tells her that she is going to bear the Christ child. So how is this going to be? She knows who Gabriel is. She knows who the Archangel Gabriel is because she's had a relationship with him. He's come and fed her. He's given her things for years now. So that's kind of going on. And she says, let it be to me according to your word. And then she goes down to Jerusalem to go visit Zacharias and Elizabeth. And Elizabeth is now with child for 6 months in her womb. And the Virgin Mary is now pregnant. So the babe in the womb of Elizabeth leapt, and she felt him move, and he leapt for joy in her womb. Like, she felt it, and she made some amazing proclamations. Blessed are you among women, blessed is the fruit of thy womb. All generations will call me blessed, is how the Virgin Mary responds. All generations will call me blessed. Okay, this is what we continue to do to this day. We call her blessed, the Blessed Virgin Mary. Now, she stays with them for the next 3 months, and she's pregnant too, and Zacharias and Elizabeth have the child, and the child that they have is a son, and on the 8th day, he gets his name, and they name him a name that is not a name from the family, which is very unique and strange, and because even, again, in Palestinian culture, to this day, you name your firstborn son after your father. Like you're the grandfather of the child. You always do that. Like the firstborn, he gets the name of, there's no kin that's named John. There's no family member that's named John. You don't do that. Like that doesn't make any sense. So this is a problem. He can't speak to name him John. So they get him a tablet, and he writes his name as John on the tablet, which is very interesting. And then he gets his voice back. He can speak again, like almost immediately after he names his son. So he went for 9 months without a voice, and now his son is born, and he's helping, I guess, his wife take care of their newborn son. This newborn son is John, who we all know as John the Baptist. So John the Baptist is born 3 months before Jesus, and John the Baptist is cousins with Jesus. Okay, this is how we understand his kinship with Christ. Now, the Virgin Mary, after John is born, sees him as an infant, then goes up back to Nazareth, and Joseph sees that she's pregnant. He hasn't gone into her, so he knows that he didn't get her pregnant. But he's a just man, and he knows that they'll kill her if they find out that it's not his child. So he just says, I'm going to divorce her quietly in his own heart. Well, let's see this child born before I divorce her quietly and not make a big deal of this. So he gets a dream, and in that dream, he's told, no, this child is going to be the Christ. Make sure you protect him. She is a virgin. To her integrity is intact. Do not do what you think you should do, or any of that. That's not what your role is here. And so he understands his role. He understands his position. Now, he was married before, and he had children from his first wife, and she had died. He's a widow, and his children are older, but like his youngest son is James. And that's going to be part of the story in the long run here, but Jesus is now his adopted son. He's not his biological son. The other thing always needs mentioning: Joseph is an old man, never consummates this marriage. The Virgin Mary remains a virgin. She's a virgin mother. Okay, it doesn't make sense logically, and she was surprised, just as many of us are as well. She remains a virgin during giving birth to Christ, and she stays a virgin even after giving birth to Christ. This is a very important facet in the whole story. So now, Jesus' birth, Caesar Augustus, historically, is kind of wild with his desire to have a census take place all the time. So I guess the census was done differently than they are done in the modern day, or in America at least. Every 10 years, America does a census. They try to find out how many people live in America, how many people are living in Pennsylvania or New Jersey or Delaware, or how many people moved away, how many people moved in, because they have to reassign the number of seats that are in the Senate, or rather in the House of Representatives. The Senate's always two for every state. So California lost 2 seats, and Texas gains a seat, or whatever it is. Okay, so that's kind of the idea in the modern sense. It doesn't appear that was the sense of census taking in the ancient days in the Roman Empire. It was, where were you from? Where were you from? That's where you need to be at. That's where you need to go back to so that you can have the census taken. So it was the year of the census that Jesus Christ was born, and that's why Joseph and the Virgin Mary were going down into Bethlehem, is the city of David. This is where David was, the shepherd boy David, where he was born and raised, and this is his town. Like, this is his town from his childhood. And it was a sleepy town. This town is still sleepy to this day. It really wouldn't be much of anything. It's outside of Jerusalem. It's south of Jerusalem. And there's nothing really going on there. It wouldn't be known at all, except for the fact that in this sleepy town, one night, Jesus Christ was born. He was born of a virgin in Bethlehem. And Bethlehem is known as Bethlehem in English, which Beth means house, and Lahem means bread, house of bread. In Arabic, which is the language I speak, which is another Semitic language, Beit Lehem is what Bethlehem is in Arabic. So the Arabs would call it Beit Lehem. Beit Lehem means the house of flesh. The house of flesh. So Jesus Christ is the bread of life, and he also gives his flesh for us to eat. This is what he does for us believers in him. And so even in his birth, he's telling you who he is, where he was born matters. And that sleepy town is known throughout all the world because of Jesus Christ's birth. They went there because of the census, and they couldn't find a place to stay because of the census. So they ended up staying that night in a manger, which is like a cave. Okay, in Palestine, there's caves everywhere, and you basically have your animals staying in the caves, and you would build your house near the cave, and so these will become animal stables. So Jesus was born amongst the animals. He was born in not in the king's palace. He was born rather in a manger. So Jesus is born. There's 3 wise men that come. Where are they going to go? They go to the king's palace. They're here from the stars. They who did worship the stars learned from the stars to worship Jesus. And they brought to him gold, frankincense, and myrrh as offering. This is why we believe there were three kings with their entourage, okay? Because there were 3 gifts. That's why there was 3 of them. They come from the east, so from Persia. They're what's known as Zoroastrianism. They came from that faith tradition. They worshipped the stars. They were astronomers, if you will. They read the stars, and they were guided by a star to come to Jerusalem. And they said, well, where's the king, the newborn king? Because we've come to bring him a gift. And Herod, and this is a different Herod now, okay, than the one I mentioned earlier. And then there's a different one later, okay? So there's like several Herods. They're very confusing, but there is a Herod now who's in the king's palace. He goes nuts to find out that there's a newborn king who's going to threaten his reign. Okay, because babies aren't born kings. That just doesn't make any sense. You have to grow up to become the king. You're born a prince. You don't become a king, but he's a newborn king. That's what they said. Where do we find the newborn king? They look into the text of the scriptures. They say, oh, he's in Bethlehem. So they went to the palace in Jerusalem first. The king wasn't there. No newborn anything. Well, now Herod tells them, well, go find him. And once you find him, bring back word. And I too want to come to worship him. Okay? And they get wise to that, and they don't do that. They don't bring him back to the news back to Herod. They go and do something else with their lives. Go another way and don't go back through Jerusalem to go back to their homes. Joseph then gets word in a dream. So this is a second dream that Joseph has. Joseph, again, remember, there was a Joseph of the Old Testament who had dreams and then interpreted the dreams. Okay, this Joseph is also having dreams, and he's interpreting the dreams and basically being told to take Jesus out of Bethlehem south into Egypt. Okay, so they go into Egypt for a time when they're kids, and with him is James, who gets later known to be the brother of the Lord, and James goes into Egypt with his brother Jesus. Again, not biological brother. This is his kin, but not his biological brother. It's his cousin, functionally, or however we want to think of it. But it's not his biological brother. Joseph never had relations with the Virgin Mary. This can't be overstated. I repeat and reiterate over and over and over. So they go into Egypt, and Jesus is kept safe from harm, but that Herod was wicked, and he slaughtered like 2,000 innocent children in those days. That could have been the newborn king. And so that number is disputed historically, but that number is pretty much decided on by the church and agreed on. This is 2,000. It was 2,000. So I don't know the exact number, but they say that he killed 2,000 children under the age of 2 in and around Bethlehem of Judea, and that was a terrible thing. Well, what other baby was born in and around Judea around that time? Oh yeah, John, the son of Zacharias. So, everyone remembers what just happened. Zacharias went mute, now he's talking. So, wait, you had a son. Is he the newborn king? He's also, a Levitical line. His dad is a priest. And he's from the Judean line, so his family's like kingly. And remember, this Herod's not real. He's not the real king. He's a fake king installed there by the oppressive Romans. So, with his money, of course. So we can't have that. So they go to see Zacharias, and they're like, "Where's your son?" Zacharias like, "My wife left with him, and she hasn't returned. She hasn't come back. I don't know where she is, but she took him somewhere, and I don't know where she is with him." They didn't believe him, so they killed him right there. And Jesus refers to this, and it's kind of confusing in the scripture, because he says the way like you slayed righteous Abel to Zacharias, the son of Barachias. So there's another Zacharias in the Old Testament, so who's the son of Barachias. This Zacharias is not the son of Barachias, or at least it doesn't seem that way. So it's very interesting phrasing, and so it's confusing. But I like to think from A to Z, they killed all the prophets, okay, from Abel to Zacharias. So this is the Zacharias that Christ is referring to. It's this Zacharias that they killed between the temple and the altar, okay? And they did it because they were looking to kill his son, John, who was a threat, to Herod's rule. Okay? So, again, different Herod than the Herod that they're going to meet in 30 years. But this is setting it all up. So where does John the Baptist go with his mother, Elizabeth? They go into the wilderness. They go into over by the Jordan River. That's where they live. And she lives with him. He's an infant. He's like maybe a year or 2 years old at this particular moment. And she's out there in the wilderness with him for 40 days. And then she dies in the wilderness. And so John the Baptist is basically raised in the wilderness. And it's believed that he was raised by angels. So many times in Orthodox iconography, John the Baptist gets depicted with angels' wings because he's like this incredible angelic figure, is raised by angels. And he's a beautiful, beautiful man. He's very much so in the form of Elias, or Elijah, as you call him. He's eating locusts and wild honey. He's got camel skins and a leather waistband around his waist, a belt around his waist. So he's a very interesting figure. He eats locusts and wild honey, just like Elias would have, because he spent a lot of time in the wilderness. So this is where John the Baptist grew up. And what's going on in the temple in these next 30 years? Lots of corruption amongst the priests, the high priests, very corrupt, in league with the Herods, in league with the king, in league with the Romans. And there's some crazy things that the Herods are doing at the time. For instance, there was a Herod. This is now the time of Christ being 30 years old. John the Baptist is in the wilderness. They don't cross paths again for those 30 years. Okay? Until Jesus Christ is baptized by John. So the Virgin Mary is raising Jesus up, and they do all of the Jewish things that they're supposed to do. He is taken to the temple on the 40th day. He is named on the 8th day. He is taken to the temple on the 40th day. He goes down to Jerusalem to worship in the temple when it's prescribed during the feast days. But he grows up in Nazareth. He becomes the son of the carpenter. So Joseph was a carpenter, so taught Jesus carpentry. And he also he's a very good Jewish boy. His mother was in the temple, so she knows the faith very, very well, and it teaches him everything he needs to know. But becomes a teacher. By the age of 12, he is teaching everyone, and they're asking him, how does he know all these things? Who is his teacher, so to speak? Okay, because it seems that his knowledge base is just so incredible. And so there's a story about Jesus' childhood where he's about 12 years old. He's in and around Jerusalem, and he's in the temple going about his father's business, and his mother loses him with the family and doesn't find him for 3 days. And where does she find him? She finds him in the temple. I was worried sick about you. Don't you know? And he's like, well, mother, don't you know I was about my father's business? And she just kept these things in her heart. All of these things she kept near and dear to her heart. And so Jesus really becomes like a very humble, quiet figure in this time. But again, for these 30 years, if you were a dweller in Jerusalem and you believe that the Messiah is coming, and he has come even, you're looking at John the Baptist as the Messiah, So there's Andrew. He's actually hanging out with and learning from John the Baptist. And he thinks John the Baptist is the Messiah. And John the Baptist is baptizing people which is a common thing that the Jews were doing in the first century. And he would baptize them after hearing their confessions. Very important. They would confess their sins to him, and then he would wash away their sins with baptism. And so it was a baptism that later becomes a question of washing away the sins. A baptism of John, and that's not the same type of baptism that Christians experience, but it's a type of baptism. It's not the same, but it is a type. Okay, so the Christian baptism, we get baptized in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, whether we have sins to wash away or not. It's an initiation rite. Okay, but in the time of John the Baptist, he's washing away the sins of the people after they confess their sins to him. And remember, the city dwellers, the city folk, are all corrupt. All of the leadership is corrupt from top down, all the way down. So the people are going into the wilderness to find a holy man and to be taught the faith by him. So it's a really interesting time. And they're ready. They're all anticipating the coming of the Messiah, the coming of the Lord. And John the Baptist keeps telling them, I am not he. The one who comes after me is he. I am not he. I'm the voice in the wilderness saying, make straight the way of the Lord. He's functionally Elias. He's the forerunner of the coming of Christ. That's what John the Baptist is doing. And so Jesus now at age 30 is going to come to John the Baptist, and he's very much from 12 to 18, there's not much about his life written. There's not much there. Okay? There's nothing in the scripture about his life from 12 to 18. But at age 30, he comes to John. He gets baptized by John, and John realizes who is in front of him for several reasons, depending on the gospel that you read. But he either hears a voice from heaven saying, this is my beloved son in whom I am well pleased. Listen to him. Something along those lines where it's revealed to John the Baptist that this is the Messiah. And he says to Jesus Christ, he says to him, I should be baptized by you. You shouldn't be baptized by me, because he realizes that Jesus Christ is sinless. There's no sin to wash away. So he's saying functionally that I'm not worthy to loose the sandal straps on your feet. I'm not worthy to be your servant even. Okay, Jesus tells him, do this. Because he's telling him that he's showing us how to be baptized. He's showing us that we need to be baptized, that we need this rite of initiation to come into the church. And so he's baptized in the Jordan River. And the Jordan River is an interesting place for baptism for many reasons. And I've alluded to this several times already. It's the place where Elias crossed over. It's the place where the Jews, the Israelites, crossed over the Jordan River to enter into the promised land. So the Jordan River is always the place where you have to cross over to come into new life. But it's also interesting, and this is a geographical reality. And in the north, you have a big body of water called the Sea of Galilee. And there's the Jordan River flows into the Sea of Galilee, north of the Sea of Galilee. And then it flows out of the Sea of Galilee, south of the Sea of Galilee. And it goes all the way down into the Dead Sea. So somewhere in the middle of all of this, John the Baptist is living in the wilderness. Jesus comes to him. And the Jordan River, when Jesus is baptized in it, it turns back it turns back. So the Dead Sea is death. It's the lowest point on earth. So no life can come out of it because it's trapped. It's trapped in there and it just dies. So the Jordan River flows south into the Dead Sea, and then the water doesn't flow anywhere out. So it all evaporates, and it leaves this ridiculous amount of salt content in the Dead Sea, and no life can live there. It's not a place that's livable. And when Jesus Christ comes and is baptized in the Jordan River turns back towards the Sea of Galilee, the Sea of Life. And this is what Jesus Christ in his baptism also shows us, that in as many of us are baptized into Christ, have put on Christ, and we say hallelujah to that. But that's what it means. We have a new life in Christ. God has given us a new life in this baptism. So now Jesus Christ is going to start his mission work, and going to start doing all the things which I will talk about in the next video. John the Baptist, however, doesn't end well for him in a human sense. It ends gloriously well for him in a spiritual sense. John the Baptist is out there preaching, and the people in the city are hearing his preaching, and they're asking him what to do and how to live. And he has good sage advice for all of the soldiers, for instance. Be happy with your wages. A soldier will usually go into a town and raid the town and steal from the people whose house they raided. So that's above and beyond your wages. Be content with what you get, and don't be a thief, in other words. So he had good advice for the people. But he also was kind of politically minded in a real sense, because the king, this fake king that's in the palace in Jerusalem, his name is Herod. I think this is the third Herod, and it's really confusing with the Herods. If you really want to study all the Herods, I invite you to. But this is the Herod that's now in charge. I think his name is Herod Antipas, is how he's referred to. This is the one that condemns Jesus and also condemns John the Baptist. He doesn't want to condemn John the Baptist, but John the Baptist is maligning his name because he has a brother. I think his name was Philip. His brother Philip has a wife and a daughter. His wife is named Herodias, so he's Herod. Philip's wife is named Herodias, and she's beautiful, I guess, physically, but a horrible human being. But physically beautiful, which men tend to find themselves getting lost in the beauty of these women sometimes, and make bad decisions. Well, anyways, the decision he made was to marry his brother Philip's wife, Herodias. I think he killed his brother Philip, but I'm not sure on that. Anyways, Philip is out of the picture. He takes his wife to be his own wife. So now Herod is married to Herodias, and John the Baptist has been arrested at Herodias's complaint that he's talking ill about us and our relationship, and the people are telling. He's telling the people that this is an unlawful marriage, which it is, and so she's beside herself that these city folk would listen to this country bumpkin, and she wasn't having it. So John the Baptist gets arrested by Herod, King Herod, and he's in the cell. And King Herod one night decides to have a party, like kings do a lot in those days, especially, where they need to be amused by different people all the time. I mean, we kind of live a life like this, where we have a TV in front of us when we get home. We're just watching it all the time. We need to be entertained after a long day of work. Well, he's got a long day of work too, and he needs entertainment to kind of get his mind off of, I don't know, what's going on in the battlefield or whatever. So Herod has his niece dancing, his brother Philip's daughter, dancing in front of him, probably in a scandalous, provocative way. And he's so entertained by this that he offers to her up to half of his kingdom. Anything she wants, up to half of his kingdom. And so she goes to her mom and is like, Mom, what should I ask for? And her mom is like, very quickly, the head of John the Baptist on a platter. So she gets up and she says, the head of John the Baptist on this golden platter. And Herod was like, oh, did not see that one coming. So anyways, he's in front of all these guests and he has John the Baptist beheaded. And that's how John the Baptist died. And his head was on a silver or golden platter. Anyways, his head is still around this day. It's incorrupt. So you can still make out some facial features on his head, not just a skull of him. And it's in, if ever you make it to Paris, France, it's somewhere in the French region outside of Paris. So if ever you find a way to see the head of John the Baptist, I strongly encourage you to do that. So now John the Baptist has died, and Jesus is made known of his death, and of course is sad. But basically, Jesus' ministry continues off where John the Baptist let off, and that was to tell the people to repent, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. That is where we will leave off today, and next time we will talk about the life of Christ and his apostles. I hope that was a good. God bless you.